Okay, good morning. We learned today the Ilu Nishmat, Avigdor Chai Avram ben Rachel Leah Mer Tzvi, Shamash Devin Aliyah, and I'm going to put right away onto the screen the Mishnah we touched on last week briefly, and we're going to go into it a little bit more today. The goal today is to read this Mishnah. I will explain some of the things and then move into the first Mishnah of the next chapter, get a general overview, learn some of the relatively famous comments in that Mishnah. And it's interesting how over the years, certain Mishnayot and Pirke Avot become very well known and quoted a lot. It's very similar to Rashi, that when you quote a Rashi that, everyone seems to know that Rashi. There's a number of them that have become famous or well known. Famous. Anyway, so let's look at this Mishnah again. Last week, when we left off, after I translated it, the main thing we talked about was just to understand why does it say Rabbi Lezer ben Chisma in some printings and Rabbi Lezer Chisma. And we came to the conclusion his name actually was Rabbi Lezer Chisma, and that I'm not going to repeat again, but for various reasons, he was called that with this title, and his father's name was not Chisma. So he said the following few items. And today what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it, translate it, explain what each of the items is, not are, and then we're going to go back and understand the Mishnah. Rabbi Lezer Chisma Omer, Kinin upitrei nida hein gufei halachot. The concept or the laws of mixed bird offerings, you have the English here. Again, obviously I have to explain this. And the laws of Hilchot Nida, how does he translate the key to calculations of Nida days? Okay, I don't know, like that. Hein gufei halachot, they are the body of halacha. Tukufot ugmatiot, but when it comes to calculation of the equinoxes and more than that, and gematria, those are considered desserts of wisdom. Okay, so it's a little bit stilted. It's a little bit couched in information. So let's break this down. First, let's talk. I want to explain what these four items that are mentioned here in the Mishnah before we can understand what he's trying to tell us. And we use there are two words that are used here also, guf and parperet. Guf is a body, and parperet, for the most part, most people say it means dessert. So we have to understand that too. Kinin. So it's not something that applies today. The time there was a Beit HaMikdash, when a woman had a baby, and in certain other cases, which I'm not going to digress into, she would bring, after X amount of days, she would bring two birds as korbanot at the conclusion of a certain time period. The word kinin is plural of ken. Ken is a nest. She would bring these two birds. One was for a korban olah, a burnt offering, and one was for korban chatat, or a sin offering. And why and all, again, for this purpose of right now is immaterial. So he's like, okay, that's like the big deal base of halacha. So one of the issues, if you learn Masechet Kinim ever, there's only Mishnayot on it, is because these two birds are identical. If the woman forgets to say which is which, or she said which is which, or the Kohen isn't sure which is which, or there were a bunch of different korbanot they were brought, and one bird flies into a different group, and they're not sure, is it a chatat, is it an olah? Are these two olot? Are they two chataot? There's so many permutations of what could go wrong. So Rabbi Lezer ben Chisma said this is one example of a foundational idea in halacha. Again, I will have to explain that in a moment. Pitrei nida has to do with the whole idea of a woman's cycle, the halachot of vestot, of the cycles of when she will anticipate becoming a nida, these calculations. Parenthetically, I've been teaching chatan classes for many years for those who need it. And it's wonderful to, after teaching all my chatanim who I've taught, after I've taught them all the different rules and regulations, so to speak, about calculating time periods and waiting periods and all that, I say, okay, now that you learned the long division, we can lose the calculator. The calculator is the mikvah app. The mikvah app basically it figures everything out for you. But at that time period, of course, and until maybe, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, there was no app like that. It was all manual. So determining all the different potential cycles of a woman when it came to Hilchot Nida and the subdivisions of Mar'ot, it comes to the Bdika clause, All that, those fall in the category, Rabbi Elazar Chizma said, Gufei halachot. That's the body of halacha. Why? We'll see in a moment. Second half of the Mishnah. Tukufot. What are tukufot? So he translates here in English what I said, the equinoxes, the vernal equinox, the autumnal equinox, etc. But it's a lot deeper than that. When you are in shul on Shabbat Mevarchim, when you bench the new moon, you say the announcement of the coming month, when the new moon is, the new month, is before the day is mentioned, or days, is the Chazan or somebody says the molad will be at such and such a time on such and such a day. The question is, what's a molad? I actually, years ago in Chicago, I got up at a Shabbat morning. Instead of saying Shabbat Shalom, I just said, what the heck is a molad? So I started with that, and I passed out some sheets and explained it's not the first sighting of the new moon, which probably most people think it is. It's a very technical calculation. I'm going to show you in a little while, just kind of show you the math, not even go through it, just what's involved. The technical calculation of where the moon begins its new cycle, 29 days, 12 hours, X amount of parts of a minute after the prior one. Those calculations, the molad, calculations of something else, something called Birkat HaChama. What's Birkat HaChama? It's the rarest bracha that's made with a specific frequency. Let me explain what that means. We make this bracha once every 28 years. The last time it was made was 16 years ago. Therefore, it's 12 more years till it's going to be made again. Here it will be a couple days after Pesach, 12 years from now. In Chutz La'aretz, it'll be a day after Pesach, 12 years from now. Or a day, maybe at Chol Hamoed, I forgot, something like that. Don't worry about it. You'll have plenty of books about it, Ben. But what is it? What is Birkat HaChama, the blessing of the sun? First, you're not blessing the sun, of course. God forbid. It's a bracha that's made when the sun is in the exact position in the heaven relative to the earth on the fourth day of creation, when it was first created. There's a tradition, a mathematical tradition, which again I'm going to show you on the screen just to kind of fly through it to show you. Don't ask me to explain it. Of how it is determined exactly when that is, and when that bracha is made. Usually people daven what's called Hanetzach Hama. They daven with the sunrise. There's Hallel. There's certain other things that are said. There's singing, and I've seen two of them so far that I remember. And Bezrat Hashem, at least one more, I hope, maybe two, be very nice. But the idea is that it's also a very heavy mathematical calculation that 99.999% of people just rely on someone to tell them, okay, it's going to be Birkat HaChama, such a date. The second half of the statement of Gematria, which I'm sure most of you know, Gematria is where the Hebrew alphabet has a numerical value to each letter, but it's much more than that. There's the long gematria, short gematria. When you spell out the letter, let's say, for example, the letter Aleph is also spelled Aleph Lamed Pei. So you take that's a gematria also that could be used, all kinds of interesting things. Those two items, these kinds of calculations, these kinds of gematriot, and there's one other thing we'll see that Rashi adds to it. He refers to, Rabbi Elazar Chisma calls them parparaot lachochma. Those are the desserts of wisdom. Now, let's understand what these two things mean. If I were to ask you, name some of the basic foundational halachot in Judaism, most you would say Shabbat, Kashrut, Brachot, a few other things, and you'd be all right, completely right. So why does Rabbi Elazar Chisma choose two things, one that doesn't even apply anymore, and will maybe if we have Korbanot to the time Beit HaMikdash, and Pitrei Nida? What does he come up with that? So he's trying to, and first, actually, let me back up a second. Let's understand the difference in the terms. Gufei halachot, parparot lachochma, the body of halacha, and the desserts of wisdom. In every field, whether it's a Torah field or non-Torah field, let's say something like medicine, law. Now, obviously, they're all related to Torah. Everything is. Let's just say, putting the Torah aside for 1 second, looking at it only from the perspective of that particular item. There are things that a lawyer may learn, a doctor may learn, whether in school, an accountant will learn, an artist will learn, whatever, a plumber will learn. Everybody's going to learn their trade. There are things that they're critical and things that are secondary. It's like, okay, it's nice to know that. If I'm an artist, which I am definitely not, at least not a drawing artist. If I'm an artist, I may want to know a lot about certain art art history and all, but tachlis, if I want to know how to draw a certain painting, I need to know how to mix colors. I need to know about the canvas. I need to know how to dry, all these kind of things. There's certain things that are important, things that are secondary. So the gufei halachot are things he says are the important. That's part of the, you can't get along without it. And paparod lechochma refers to dessert, except for a few people, my wife included. The dessert is not the main course. For most people, for some people, eating the main course is just a reason to be allowed to get to dessert. Or the old line says, starts with dessert. You never know what life has in store for you. But generally speaking, you have a main course. You maybe have something before it. You have a main course, and you have something after it. And you have dessert. What's the dessert? Remember the line in the commercial? There's always room for Jell-O, right? People, and many people like to eat dessert after a meal, especially after a dinner. They go out for a dinner. It's not the meal. It's secondary. It's a dessert. It's a nice little add-on. It gives a little bit more oneg, gives a little more enjoyment. Like, oh yeah, can't eat another bite, but oh wow, look at that piece of cake, right? So it's a little bit more enjoyment, both visual and also from taste. And he says that when it comes to tekufot and gematriot and other things, which we'll see shortly, those are secondary. Okay, so now, first let me explain to you the overall idea or message of this Mishnah. I know a guy who would message me a lot, a young man. He's probably in his 30s now. A young man who would message me about, well, a frum guy, Davin, a normal religious guy, said, but he also somehow likes to learn about Jesus and not to learn the New Testament, but to understand a little bit so he can, I guess, counteract some of the things. And he asked me a lot of these deep questions and all. I stopped him one time. I said, if you would spend as much time learning Breshit Bara Elokim and learning Mishnah Berurah and learning, maybe Mesilat Yesharim, as much as you do on this Jesus stuff, you'd be a great Talmid Chacham. What does that mean? It's important to, which we will learn in Pirke Avot, Dama Lashiv. You have to know how to respond to apostates and to people who try to convert you and all. But that's secondary. You need the basis. You need the fundamentals. Go into an average yeshiva. I'm not talking high school. Go into yeshiva gvoha, where guys are learning for years, and where they're learning Gemara, and they're learning Rishonim and Achronim, and the Ritva, the Rambam, and the Ramban, and the Meshita Mekubetzet, and all that. Ask them to tell you what is Trei Asar. What is it? Well, it happens to be the book of 12 minor prophets in Tanakh. It's one of the books, considered one book, one of the 24 books of the Tanakh. If you say, where are you going to find Nahum? Sefer Nahum. I don't know, maybe in the Tanakh. In other words, they're so focused on these, and not, God forbid, that the Gemara is secondary, but know your fundamentals, know your Aleph Bet. It's very important, and it's part of the general idea here he's trying to tell us. Not that Shabbat is not considered gufei halachot, not that brachot is not gufei halachot, not that all these other things I mentioned are not gufei, but even down to the things that are complicated, and to say even these things, and maybe it doesn't even apply. It's a body of halacha. It's Mishnah. It's important. It's your foundation. That comes before, I'm going to spend my day writing a book of Gematria. Or I'm going to sit there and work out the calculation of Birkat HaChamam because it's so cool, right? Learn Mishnah. Learn Hilchot Nidah, not just. Learn these things. I've had the discussion with people over the years. What do they consider the most complicated area of halacha? The halacha is, they say halacha l'maisa, like not kinim, because unfortunately we don't have the Beit HaMikdash, but what in practical halacha terms would they consider some of the most complicated areas of halacha? Usually it boils down to two things. Some of you are probably thinking right away, Shabbat. It's not. It's nowhere near. In my personal opinion, there are two areas, and this is mostly what I've heard also. One is halachot of brachot. Brachot is much more complicated than Hilchot Shabbat, believe it or not. And again, because there's so many situations where it's not sure what to make. Sometimes you make one bracha, sometimes you're making three brachot on something. It's a mix, and you make it, what if it's raw, what if it's cooked, what if it's, take the average thing, the rice cake. Rice cake, there are three opinions what bracha you make. So basically, whatever you end up making is okay. But there are three different opinions on it. I have my own opinion. That's one area of halacha that's very complicated. And one another area, which unfortunately many people are unaware of, is ribit, which is interest. It's very easy. People might think, oh, I never would loan with interest. I know it's asur. But it's very easy to get tripped up with it. And there's so many things. Whether you do a private mortgage with somebody, where you do a loan with somebody. You know what? I really appreciate you having loaned me the 1,000 shekel. Listen, here's a couple of tickets to the basketball game. Really appreciate it. That's repeat. You can't do stuff like that. And there's so many complicated levels of halacha. Rabbi Chisma is giving two examples of things that are involved with all these things are involved with calculations, by the way. All four of these items, kinim, pitrei nidat, kufot, and gematrot, all involve calculations. And the person should not say, in any of those, I can't do that. At least understand the basics, understand the theory behind it. And when you don't understand, then you ask. But if you don't understand, at least you know that there's something to understand. I would get calls sometimes from people, and say, I have a situation, blah, blah, blah. Is this an issue of rebit? And I'd say to myself, I'm shocked that this person, I would never say that, knew what rebit is even, interest. Or that now they may have known, but didn't even realize. How in the world did they even think that this was? That is so cool. In other words, if you don't have a basic knowledge of things in general that you're supposed to do, that you can do, that you can't do, you don't even know that there's a question. That's the Sheino Yodeh Lishol at the Seder. Sheino Yodeh Lishol at the Seder sits there and says nothing because they don't know what to ask. It's not because they're little. They just don't have the experience. It could be they're little. Also, they don't have the experience. And you don't know what to ask. If someone took me and brought me to, God forbid, some religious non-Jewish ceremony, like I'd be watching, I wouldn't say, how come they do it this way instead of that? Well, I don't know. That's not my religion. It's nothing I have to do with it. And I don't want to know it anyways. So all these things, the gufei halachot, kini and pitrei nidat, are merely examples, things that apply at the time of the Beit HaMikdash, things that apply all times, things that are involved with calculations. And he's saying gufei halachot. The guf is the body. It's that which we need in order to grow, literally, figuratively, spiritually, and we shouldn't shy away from the halachot. And then doesn't mean we have to master all the halacha, but then we are allowed then to move on concurrently to also be involve ourselves a little bit with kufot and gematriot. So I'm going to show you a slide. Let me take it off of here for a minute. Share this. Now, I'm not going to go through it because honestly, I just put this into ChatGPT to help me out because even though some of this I actually know about the molad, but not a lot of the other stuff. Just to take a look, it talks about 29 days, 12 hours, 793 and he was called Tashtzag Chalakim, 793 parts of a minute. And the way this is all figuring out what's called the molad tohu, the calculation method. I'm going to put it on the screen again. And it gives one example, the molad of Tishrei in 5785, which was a year ago, coming up to 5786. It talks about the significance in halacha, very nice. But if you want to take a look at, they also talk about Kufat Shmuel, Kufat Nisan. This has to do also with the various equinoxes. Also interesting. The other thing I talk about, Birkat HaChamad. Just take a look. I'm going to run down here. All this math. And even if you're a math person, there's a lot here that would have to be digested. And this is just for deciding when one bracha is made. All this. This is what he's referring to when he talks about kufot. One of the things he refers to. What about gematriot? So with gematriot, let's first take a look and see what other thing it says. Let me put it up here. This is an example of gematriot that are sort of well known because they're repeated so many times. I'll just tell you. We know that when Hashem talks to Avraham Avinu, he said that your children are going to be strangers in a strange land for 400 years, right? 400 years. Yet, we know they go out after, they're only there for 210 years. And the actual slavery is only literally about 80 years. So how does it know 10 years? So it says, Redu Shama, Redu, go down there. Reish Dalid Vav. Reish is 200, Dalid is 4, Vav is 6. That's 210 years. Okay. When Aharon HaKohen is told, beginning of Parshat Achrei Mot, Bezot Yavo Aharon El HaKodesh, with this, Aharon was allowed to go into the Kodesh Kodashim, the Holy of Holies. Bezot is Gematria, 410 years, because the Beit Rishon, the first Beit HaMikdash, eventually stood for 410 years. Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe. The word Torah, Gematria, is 611. Well, wait, why shouldn't it be 613? That's Torah. So the two are the fact that in the Aseret HaDibrot, it's a hint that in the Aseret HaDibrot, the first two, where Hashem says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha lo yeh lecha, Hashem himself said those two Dibrot, the Bnei Yisrael heard them. So it's the 611 plus 2 is 613. Finally, Kadosh Yehiyeh, that when a person says, I am a Nazir, I take upon, I'm saying that, I'm not saying for myself, I take on myself a vow of to be a Nazir. I'm not going to cut my hair, I'm not going to drink wine, I'm not going to be tamei to a dead body. So he said, how long does that last? So the Mishnah tells us, Stam Nizirut Shloshim Yom, that if someone just says it without delineating how many days they're going to be a Nazir, 30 days. Why 30? Now it's a round number. So it says, Kadosh Yehiyeh, he shall be holy. Yehiyeh B'Gematria is 30. So based on that, they said 30 days. Now, in addition to that, Rashi also said that it's not just Gematriot, but it's also something called Notricon. Notricon, which is based, if you can't hear from the word, is based on a Greek word, and it means like abbreviations, or Rashi Tev, we say in English, in Hebrew, Rashi Tevot. So I'm going to give you the one I knew automatically to look up, and I'm sure there are plenty others. This is in the story of Bil'am. He's on his donkey, and he's walking with his donkey, and he stops, and he hits his donkey. He hits him a second, he hits him a third time. Vayomer Elav Malach Hashem. So the angel of Hashem says to Bil'am, Amai kita tatoncha zeh shalosh begalim. Why have you hit your donkey 3 times? Rashi, of course, tells us shalosh begalim is a hint to the idea that Bnei Yisrael are going to keep the shalosh, the chagim. Hinei anochi yotzati lesatan, ki yarat haderech lenegdi. There's a word yarat. What does it mean? So what does it say in the Midrash? The word yarat is notrikon. It stands for word. Yar'a, ra'ata, natita. He saw, he was afraid, he saw, and he turned away. Klomar, ha'aton yar'a, the donkey was afraid. Kasher ra'ata malach. He was afraid when he saw the malach, the fichach, therefore, natita min haderech. It veered off the road. Okay, second half there. But here you have the word yarat, yarata, natita. It's one of the, I only say famous because I have to remember it, of the Notricon that are, so again, now what Rabbi Lezer Chisma is telling us is that this is nice, this is good to know, this is a nice idea, but you see it starts that Rashi starts with the Fi Midrasho. Very often, Rashi tells us what we call pshat. What do the words mean? What's the basic meaning? And then it gives a midrash, or it'll say davar acher, another possible explanation. I probably complained too much about education over the years, but you have to bear with me. One of the failures in some level of education is when children especially are being taught early on in Sefer Breshit. Others do it in Shemot, but especially in Breshit. They're taught Rashi. And when Rashi gives 2 explanations, one is the pshat and one time it's the midrash. So the teachers will explain quickly, I've seen it, explain quickly what's pshat, what's the basic meaning, but then they go in the midrash and they spend all their time on that. The midrash is important. It's very important. It's part of our Torah base. But first, and make sure they know what the pasuk means based on Rashi. That's more important than the midrash. There are all kinds of ways that you learn Rashi. Why does he sometimes say it first in the midrash, then he gives you the pshat, all kinds of amazing things. But the idea being, he's telling us in this Mishnah that hen gufei halachot is these complicated halachot, and don't shy away from it. It's part of the body halachot. Don't say, I don't need to know it because it's so complicated. In addition to all the other stuff, and once you've started to at least familiarize yourself, and you know that there's such a thing as hilchot nida, and you know that there's such a thing as ribit and brachot, Once you understand and can recognize that there are questions and discussions that need to be had, then start working a little bit on gematria, notricon, other things like that. Good. So that's pretty much what I want to say about this particular Mishnah. I'd say that what probably the main thing to get out of the Mishnah is understand what is ikar, what is the main part of our learning, and what is tafel, what is secondary. Again, not to slam gematria, not to slam notricon, not to slam anything, but understand where you should be spending more of your time. Most people have a limited amount of time when they can learn. Life gets in the way. Unfortunately, most people can't sit and learn like Rav Kanievsky Zatzal, like so many other people, basically 22 or 21 hours a day. It's a special neshama that's able to do that anyways. But when you do have X amount of time, divide it up properly. Use your time wisely in order what to learn and what's considered ikar, what's considered tafel. Okay, that is the end of chapter 3, and we move into chapter 4. Let's move that down a little bit. And this is one of those that all of you are familiar with, at least, if not all, at least one or two of the lines in this Mishnah. Let me read it and translate it, and we're going to go back and talk about it. And I'll propose a couple of questions before we even explain the Mishnah. Let me start with one. The author of this Mishnah, the person who says these things, is a man named Ben Zoma. Zayin Vav Mem Aleph, Ben Zoma. There's a next Mishnah that we're going to have. One second. Ben Azai. There's another Mishnah that's going to be quoted, a man named Ben Azai. So the obvious question is, well, he didn't have his own name. It's like, be calling me Ben Binyamin. Well, I have a name. Why don't you call me by my name? In addition to that, why isn't he called Rebbe? Right? We said Rebbe Harkanis and Rebbe this, Rebbe that. All of a sudden, he's not having the title Rebbe. He also doesn't have his own name. It's called Ben Zoma. So we're going to come back to that. I just want to mention that in case someone thought about, hey, why doesn't he have a name? So let's talk about what Ben Zoma said. Ezeu Chacham, who is wise? Halomed mikol adam, one who is able to learn from everybody. Shneimar, for it says, mikol malamdai hiskalti, ki e devotecha sichali. Look at this. I want to show you this. This is one of my other pet peeves in life. I have so many. If you read Tilim, or you do go to Azkara, and you're reading Parak Kuf Yotet, chapter 119 in Tilim, the letters of a person's name, very often you will see this word, Ayin Dalad Vav Taf Yud Chaf. You will see it other times without the Vav. Without the Vav, it's pronounced Eidotecha, your statutes. When you see it with the Vav, it is pronounced Eidevotecha. It's not pronounced Eidotecha. You'll notice under the Dalad, there's a Shva, there's 2 dots. It's Eidevotecha. You now know more than 98% of people. Trust me. Everybody. I've heard rabbis, I've heard Torah scholars, non-Torah scholars, all mispronounce that word. So now you know. Okay, like the more you know. Okay, so let's go back. I have been able to learn, or I've been taught from all those from everyone, from all my teachers. I've gained understanding. We'll just see what that means more. Because if it says Mikol Melamdai, fellows who taught me, it sounds like my teachers. But he just said Halomei Mikol Adam. Someone learns from everybody. Second statement. Ezeu Gibor, who is considered strong, mighty, Hakovesh et Yitzor, someone who's able to overcome, to vanquish, what's he say here in English? To subdue his evil inclination. Shenemar Tovech Apayim Gibor Moshe Berucho Miloched Ir. English, he that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city. Very nice. Ezehu Ashir, who is considered rich, Hasamech Bechalko, someone who's happy with what he has. Shneimar Yegia Kapecha Ki Tochel Ashrecha V'Tov Lach, Ashrecha Ba'olam Hazeh V'Tov Lach La'olam Haba. Ezehu Mechubad, who is considered honorable or honored, Hamachabed et Haberiot, one who honors living creatures. Shneimar Ki Mechabdai Achabed Uvozai Yekalu. What's he say? For I honor those who honor me, but those who spurn me shall be dishonored. Okay. There's a reason this Mishnah became so well known. I'm going to skip to a slide if I have it here and then come back to that. Okay. As I was learning this Mishnah, this time, never in the past, only this time, which is why I love teaching because I always figure out new things. The Maslow chart of a person's needs popped into my head. Now, I know he has 5 things, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 things here, but the items that are mentioned in this Mishnah seem to correspond. And why does Ben Zoma use these 4 things? We're going to talk about that. But if you take a look at this slide, interestingly enough, I have a note here I wrote to myself that this idea of self-actualization, creativity, personal growth, moral development is chokhmah, is chacham. The second level of esteem, self-respect, confidence, respect from others is kavod. The third one, we talk about safety needs, skipping love and belonging for a moment. Personal security, health and well-being, money. Person wants to feel financial security, just like it says here. And finally, ezeu gibor, love and belonging, family, friendship, community. Because a gibor doesn't mean a person only on the battlefield, which of course it does. It also means, are you a gibor in the house? Are you like someone who is able to have great shalom bayit? Are you able to make good friendships? Are you good in your community? To be a gibor within your own community. And physiological needs are the basics. Okay, so that's why I'm not even talking about. Those are physical needs as well. This is Maslow's hierarchy. I forgot to put it on the chart on the slide here. But when I read this Mishnah this time, and again, it never hit me before, I thought that might be an interesting correlation. So let's talk a little bit about this slide here. Move it down. Actually, I'll make it smaller. Okay, to understand why are these 2 people, Ben Zoma and Ben Azai, who we haven't met yet, are they called by that like son of as opposed to having their name? And also doesn't say Rabbi. So there's a couple of possibilities. Rashi tells us in Gemara and Kiddushin. Now you'll see there's a Rashi in Kiddushin and a Rashi here in the Sechet Avot. We're going to talk about both of them. In Kiddushin, he says as follows: Talmidim hayu. These 2 men, Ben Azai and Ben Zoma, were students. Ubachurim, and they were young. They were single men. Lo ba'u lichlal smicha, and they had not yet reached the point in their life where they received smichat chachamim, to get the title of rabbi, where a teacher physically lismoch and put his hands on his head and say, "You don't have the title." Lo hayu bimehem kamotam b'torah, but yet, even nevertheless, there were no people that were as great as them in their time. Kiritnan, as we see in the end of Masechet Sotah, Mishamet ben Azai batu hashaktanim. And it's interesting Gemara over there to look at, but I don't want to talk about that now. So the first opinion Rashi gives, why they're called that. He doesn't address the issue of Rabbi or Rebbe, or why they don't have a title. He does, because they didn't have smicha. And why they go by the son of, because they're still giving us the idea they were not children, but they were young and they were yet still so brilliant. In Masechet Avot, when Rashi comments, he changes it a little bit. It says Shimon ben Zoma, v'Shimon ben Azai, v'Shimon Teimani. There were 3 people in the same time period who were tremendous Talmidei Chachamim that then had the name Shimon, and in order the Fi Shelo Yichu Yamim, and since they did not live long lives, Nikru al Shem Avihem. They were called on the name of their father. So he gives 2 possible reasons why they were called these different, not on the name of by their own name. But the Maharal disagrees. Maharal has a different answer. He says, why are they Ben and not Rabbi? He says they were so brilliant. Now remember, Rashi already made this comment in Kiddushin. They were so brilliant that they actually were able to sit in the Beit Midrash as kids, to sit with the Gedolei Yisrael, to absorb, to learn. And already at that age, people saw the brilliance. Everyone would talk, who is this? Oh, he's Azai's kid. He's Zoma's kid. And that's stuck. It's Ben Azai, it's Ben Zoma. And it was actually and they weren't in Rabbi at the time, obviously, they were kids. And as a result of this honor that they were being paid, like, wow, it's honor to the father, honor to the child, being such a brilliant Torah scholar. This, so to speak, nickname stuck, and that's what it stayed with. But we're going to take a look again. Let's go back to the Mishnah for a second and take a look. I highlighted or bolded 4 words, right? 4 concepts. One is Ezeu Chacham, who is wise. Ezehu Gibor, who is considered mighty. Number 3, Ezehu Ashir, who is considered rich. And number 4, Ezehu Mechubad. There are many things that Ben Zoma could have said in this Mishnah. Who is considered humble? Who is considered calm? He chose these 4 things for reasons the Parshanim tell us, the commentaries tell us as follows. These are 4 things, again, keep in the back of your mind this idea of Maslow's hierarchy that people strive for in life. They attempt to acquire these things. Some may spend more time on one, more on the other. Ben Zoma is not negating, saying, oh, these are terrible. You shouldn't try to have any, to be mechubad. You shouldn't try to be a gibor. You shouldn't try to be ashir. He's saying that if you want to strive for chokhmah, gvura, ashir, kavod, not the bad kavod, that there is a litmus test. There is a k'nei midah, there's a way to measure. If I have, let's say I have $50 million, $50 million in the bank in America, right? Would you consider me rich? Most people consider me rich. If I were sitting with Elon Musk, who's a multi-gazillionaire, would he consider me rich? I mean, yachasit, I'm rich, but compared to him, that's chump change. It's nothing. Person who is in Sudan, who meets a person who has a pair of shoes, clothing that aren't worn out, a person who has plenty of food, they look at him and say, oh my God, the guy's a multimillionaire. He's got everything. He's got shoes. He doesn't have to take 2 bottles, plastic bottles, and tie them to his feet to make a pair of shoes. I'm sure you've seen the pictures of that kind of stuff. Ashirut is relative. Riches are relative. Chokhmah is relative, right? If you're talking to someone like Einstein or Steve, well, don't talk to Stephen Hawking, but if you have to, if you're talking to many of these people who are brilliant and you're in the same room with them, no matter how smart you are, you're not the smartest person in the room. So there has to be a litmus test. What is, if we're striving for it, how do we know? Same thing is true with kavod, gvura. And he tells us a very interesting perspective. It isn't about the money. It isn't about the physical strength. It isn't about that your name is on some building because you donated a lot of money. He said, what it boils down to is a Torah value. And the Torah value of who is considered wise is someone not who knows so much, but someone who's open to learning from everybody. Halomed mikol adam. You'll take a look at the pasuk said, "Mikom lamdai hiskalti." I have learned from all those who've taught me. What does that mean? That I'm open to learning from everybody. I will tell you. It says, "Mikom lamdai hiskalti u'metalmidai yoter michulam." I've learned more from my students than from anybody else, and I can tell you, after teaching officially for 26 years, unofficially for probably 45, it is the absolute 100%, as they say, God's honest truth. I can learn, but when I have a student who asks me a question, or I have to learn to prepare a class, that causes me to have to learn more. I've had students ask me questions I say I've never thought of. I gave the example a couple of years ago in a class that still sticks in my head. I was teaching a kid at Amit. Kid is 13, maybe. We were learning Parshat Shemot. We learned about the midwives, Shifra and Puah. He looks at me and said, wait a minute. There are a lot of Jewish women. A lot of women giving birth. Are those the only 2 midwives? I said, I don't know. Great question. Turns out the question was asked by, I think, they're all Bag, I think. And he gave an answer. Like, I never even thought about that. I thought of a question the other day. I have to go looking for it. And if you have an answer, if you've heard this, I would love to know. It just hit me the other day. The famous midrash that one of the reasons Moshe had a speech impediment is that when he was little, he was on Paro's lap. Everyone learned the story, I'm sure, at some point in your life, that they put 2 things in front of him. Paro put a gold and coal, hot coal, and he reaches for the gold, and the malach pushes his hands, and he touches the coal, burns his hand, puts it in the mouth to cool it off, and he burns his tongue, and burns his mouth. And that's how he got a speech impediment. Very nice. It's probably a mashal, probably never happened, but what do I know? But let's assume it did. What burned was his hand. If you burn your hand, you put it in your mouth. Your hand's not on fire to burn your mouth. How did his mouth get burned? I never. It just occurred to me. So these kind of basic questions. So chokhmah, wisdom, is not just the amount of wisdom and knowledge you acquire, but being open to learning from everybody, and that even means someone who is is disagreeing with you. You are not always right. Nikuda. You can't be. Not everyone, no one is always correct. They can be 99% right, they can be 80% right, but they can't always be 100% right. And if you're not open to listening to somebody else's opinion and learning from them, then you shut down. It's a problem. You're allowed to be as strong as you want on your opinion. You could try to prove your opinion, but you also need to keep an open mind that maybe you're wrong, or maybe you have to look at it from a different perspective. So, again, gvura. What do we? If you look at the movies and magazines and books, and when it talks about gvura, we're talking usually about someone full of muscle, someone who's able to, pick their car up or save the lady in distress, whatever it might be, the classic stereotypes. Again, that's not the Jewish goal. The Jewish goal is that gvura is internal. Our gvura is not a matter of muscle. It's our muscle in our neshama, the muscle where we say, I know I'm not supposed to have that. I really want it, but I'm not going to have it, or I'm not going to do it. Not everyone has the same struggle. Example, someone who grew up not religious, or someone who grew up not Jewish and becomes Jewish, might have a struggle, even many, many years later. Not so much here because you can't come across it easily, but if you're in the United States or other cities, you walk by a seafood restaurant, or you walk by whatever it might be, something treif, it smells great, and they may have a struggle. I haven't had it for 20 years, but man, I still love to have that. Me, it would never bother. It may smell good. Walk by an Arby's roast beef sandwich place, it smells good, but it would never even occur to me like, maybe I should go in there. It's not a struggle, right? So I don't have to overcome that Yetzer Hara. I have other Yetzer Hara to overcome, but not that. Everyone has their thing, so to speak. And what Ben Zoma is telling us is that person who's able to overcome that Yetzer Hara or those Yetzer Haras, that's a Gibor. Ezo Ashir, again, not measured by wealth as far as money, not measured by property, not measured by how much stock a person has. That is an absolute measure of wealth, obviously, in a physical sense. But he's saying hasamech bechelko. Why is it that when someone's happy with what they have, that's a sign of someone who's rich? It's an acknowledgement that you have exactly what Hashem decided you need and will have. Nikuda. It's an absolute statement of emunah, in faith in Hashem. Because you could try all you want to do, but you're not going to get one shekel more than you're supposed to have. And if you steal it, that's also a different story. It doesn't fall in this category. When a person's happy with what they have in their money, in their finances, in their family life, in the physical stuff, never be happy with or I shouldn't say happy, never be satisfied with your spiritual life. Always you want to grow. Always you want to grow. You always want to grow also in your ability to be happy with what you have. But when it comes to physical things, understand that you have what Hashem said you're going to have. Last one is Ezeh Muhbad, who is considered honorific or honored. Again, it's not because you have your name posted on a building, it's up in lights and the so-and-so plaza. It has to do with how you act towards other people. Are you mechabed? Do you honor others? Doesn't mean do you bow down to somebody. It means do you hold the door open for somebody? Do you say, no, let me help you? How you react and act towards other people reflects back on you. That's the general, we have obviously a lot to talk about, the general idea of this Mishnah. Bezrat Hashem will continue next week, and wish everyone a Shabbat Shalom, and hope that we have much as far as Besorot Tovot. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you,